The galaxy was vast, cold, and unforgiving. Humanity had been scattered like dust across the stars after Earth's destruction 3,000 years ago. The Galactic Council, a coalition of powerful alien races, had deemed humanity too dangerous to exist. Their cities were burned, their oceans boiled away, and their skies filled with ash. Now, all that remained were fragments, people living in squalid colonies, hiding on barren moons, or serving as slaves under alien rule. Daniel Rivers sat alone in his small quarters aboard Epsilon 7, one of the many colony worlds. He wasn't a soldier or a leader. He was just a historian trying to piece together the shattered past. His room was cluttered with old books, cracked data tablets, and broken artifacts he'd scavenged over the years. For Daniel, history was more than a hobby. It was a way to keep humanity alive. If they forgot who they were, then Earth's destruction would truly be the end. That day, however, something changed. While digging through ruins outside the colony, Daniel stumbled upon something strange buried beneath layers of rock and dirt. It was a shard, no bigger than his palm, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. At first, he thought it was worthless, a piece of junk left behind by some long-dead civilization. But when he touched it, the shard pulsed brighter, projecting images into the air. The hologram showed scenes of Earth, its towering cities, lush forests, and endless oceans. Then came darker visions, fire raining from the sky, screams echoing through the streets, and finally, silence. In the last image, words appeared in ancient human text. When the heart of Earth calls, its children shall rise. Daniel stared at the message, his heart pounding. Was this real? Or was it just another myth dreamed up by desperate people clinging to hope? He knew he couldn't figure it out alone. He needed someone smarter, someone practical, someone like Rachel Monroe. Rachel was a mechanic, known for fixing anything from broken shuttles to malfunctioning life support systems. She didn't believe in legends or prophecies. To her, survival meant focusing on the here and now, not chasing fairy tales. But when Daniel showed her the shard, even she couldn't deny its significance. "It's not just a relic," Rachel said, turning the shard over in her hands. Her voice was calm, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "This is advanced tech, way beyond anything we've seen before." Together, they studied the shard late into the night. It revealed more than just images. It contained coordinates and codes pointing to hidden archives. These archives supposedly held information about weapons created during humanity's golden age, weapons powerful enough to challenge the Galactic Council. As word spread through the colony, whispers of rebellion began to grow. Some dismissed it as madness, while others saw it as their only chance. Daniel felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. If these weapons existed, could they really use them to take revenge on the Council? And if they did, would they become monsters like the ones who destroyed Earth? For now, the answers eluded them. All they had was a glowing shard and a fragile spark of hope. But sometimes, that was enough to ignite a fire. Word of the shard and its mysterious message spread quickly through Epsilon 7. At first, only a few people paid attention. Curious neighbors or old friends who trusted Daniel and Rachel. But soon, others began to take notice. Refugees, miners, and even ex-soldiers came forward, eager to learn more about the hidden archives and the weapons they might contain. The idea of fighting back against the Galactic Council ignited something deep within them, a spark of defiance that had been buried for centuries. Daniel wasn't prepared for this kind of attention. He was used to working alone, quietly collecting pieces of the past. Now he found himself at the center of a growing movement. Some called it foolish, while others saw it as their last chance for freedom. Among those drawn to the cause were Marcus Kane and Leela Hayes, two individuals whose lives had been shaped by loss and anger. Marcus was a former soldier, his body marked by scars, both visible and invisible. He had fought in skirmishes against the Council's enforcers decades ago, but had retreated into solitude after losing his unit. When he heard about the shard, He felt a pull he couldn't ignore. For years, he carried guilt over surviving when so many hadn't. Maybe this was his chance to make things right. Leela, on the other hand, was driven by knowledge. A brilliant astrophysicist, she had spent her life studying stars and planets, searching for answers to questions no one else cared about. Her family had died during Earth's destruction, leaving her with nothing but memories and equations. The shard fascinated her, not because of its message, but because of what it represented. Proof that humanity once stood tall among the stars. Together, the group decided to call themselves the Vanguard. They weren't soldiers or heroes. They were just ordinary people united by a shared purpose. Their first goal was clear: follow the coordinates encoded in the shard and find the hidden archives. But getting there would be dangerous. The path led through territories controlled by ruthless mercenaries and patrolled by the Council's fleets. Their journey took them to abandoned outposts and derelict ships floating silently in the void. Each stop brought new challenges. On one occasion, they barely escaped an attack by space pirates. Another time, they narrowly avoided detection by a Council patrol ship. Through it all, tensions simmered within the group. Marcus wanted to move quickly, taking risks to reach their destination faster. Rachel urged caution, reminding everyone that one wrong step could mean death. Daniel tried to keep the peace, but even he struggled under the pressure. Finally, they reached Proxima Station, a crumbling research facility orbiting a dying star. According to the shard, the station held critical information about the weapons. As they approached, however, they realized they weren't alone. The station was occupied by a faction known as the Iron Claw, a group of mercenaries notorious for their brutality. Worse still, someone within the Vanguard leaked their mission to the Council, forcing them to act swiftly. While planning their next move, Leela made a startling discovery. Hidden in the shard's data was evidence of a traitor among them. Suspicion fell on Alex Carter, a quiet medic who had joined the group recently. When confronted, Alex admitted to contacting the Council, but not for the reasons they expected. He believed humanity couldn't win this fight alone, and hoped the Council would offer protection in exchange for cooperation. Before they could decide what to do, the Iron Claw launched an ambush. In the chaos, most of the Vanguard was captured. Only Daniel and Rachel managed to escape, clutching the shard and the data they had retrieved. As they fled into the darkness of space, they knew their mission was far from over. But they also knew one thing for certain: trust was a fragile thing, and betrayal could come from anywhere, even within their own ranks. Daniel and Rachel barely escaped the ambush at Proxima Station, their shuttle shaking as they fled into the void of space. Behind them, the Iron Claw's ships roared to life, ready to give chase. But luck, or maybe desperation, was on their side. A nearby asteroid field provided cover, and with Rachel's quick thinking and steady hands, they slipped away unnoticed. For now, they were safe, but the cost was heavy. Most of the Vanguard had been captured, including Marcus and Leela. Without their team, the weight of their mission felt unbearable. "We can't just leave them," Daniel said, his voice tight with frustration. He stared at the shard glowing faintly in his hand. It was the only thing keeping them going, but it also felt like a cruel reminder of how much they'd already lost. "We don't have a choice," Rachel replied, her tone firm despite the sadness in her eyes. "If we go back now, we're dead. And if we're dead, there's no one left to finish this." Her words stung, but Daniel knew she was right. They couldn't afford to act recklessly, not when so much depended on them. Still, the guilt gnawed at him. Every second they delayed meant more danger for their captured friends. Rachel suggested heading to Haven, a secret refuge rumored to exist deep in uncharted space. According to old stories, it was built centuries ago by rebels who refused to surrender after Earth's destruction. If anyone could help them regroup and plan a rescue, it would be the people there. With no better options, they set a course for the coordinates Rachel had memorized from ancient maps. The journey was long and tense. They stayed silent most of the time, each lost in their own thoughts. Daniel replayed the events at Proxima Station over and over in his mind, wondering what they could have done differently. Was Alex truly a traitor, or had he been trying to protect them in his own misguided way? The questions swirled endlessly, leaving him exhausted. When they finally arrived at Haven, they found it hidden behind layers of cloaking technology, nearly invisible against the backdrop of stars. The station itself was small and worn, patched together from scraps of old ships and abandoned outposts. But it was alive with activity. Refugees moved through its corridors, tending to crops grown in hydroponic gardens or repairing equipment scavenged from the wreckage of humanity's past. They were greeted by Evelyn Brooks, an elderly woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. She introduced herself as an archivist, someone who had dedicated her life to preserving human history. Her quarters were filled with books, holographic records, and artifacts salvaged from Earth. She listened intently as Daniel and Rachel explained their mission and showed her the shard. "This is remarkable," Evelyn said, examining the artifact closely. "It's not just a key to the archives. It's proof that humanity never gave up, even in its darkest hour." Evelyn helped them decode the remaining data stored in the shard. It revealed detailed plans for retrieving the weapons, including information about 3 keys needed to unlock their full power. Each key was hidden in dangerous locations across the galaxy, guarded by forces loyal to the Council. The task ahead seemed impossible, but Evelyn reminded them of something important. Humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. As they prepared to leave Haven, Daniel felt a flicker of hope return. They weren't alone anymore. Evelyn promised to spread word of their mission, rallying others to join the fight. For the first time since escaping Proxima Station, Daniel allowed himself to believe they might actually succeed. But as their shuttle departed, Rachel glanced back at the shrinking station. "We still have to get the others out," she said quietly. "And we're running out of time." The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Every step brought them closer to either victory or disaster. The Vanguard's mission became clearer with each piece of information Evelyn had uncovered, but the challenges ahead only grew more daunting. The 3 keys needed to unlock the weapons were scattered across hostile territories, each location more dangerous than the last. Daniel and Rachel knew they couldn't do this alone. They needed help, and fast. Their first stop was Zeta Prime, a volcanic planet covered in rivers of molten lava and swarming with predatory creatures that hunted in packs. It was said to be uninhabitable, which made it the perfect hiding place for the first key. As their shuttle descended through thick clouds of ash, the heat hit them like a wall. Even inside the cockpit, sweat dripped down their faces. "Stay sharp," Rachel warned as they landed near a jagged mountain range. "We don't know what's out here." They moved cautiously, scanning the terrain for signs of movement. The shard glowed brighter the closer they got to the mountain, guiding them toward a hidden cave entrance. Inside, the air was cooler, but the darkness pressed in on them. Using dim lanterns, they navigated narrow tunnels until they reached a chamber filled with glowing crystals. At its center rested the first key, a small metallic orb pulsing with energy. But retrieving it wouldn't be easy. The moment Daniel touched the orb, alarms blared, and the ground began to shake. From the shadows emerged large, insect-like creatures with razor-sharp claws. Panic surged through Daniel, but Rachel stayed calm, grabbing tools from her pack to defend them. She rigged a makeshift trap using wires and explosives, buying them enough time to escape. As they ran back to the shuttle, one of the creatures lunged at Daniel, pinning him to the ground. Without hesitation, Rachel fired her weapon, saving his life just in time. Back aboard the shuttle, both were shaken but alive. "Thanks," Daniel said softly, still catching his breath. "I owe you one." "You owe me plenty," Rachel replied with a faint smile, though her hands trembled as she set the orb safely in its container. Next, they traveled to an asteroid mine controlled by automated defense systems programmed to attack intruders. This time, Marcus and Leela joined them, having been rescued from the Iron Claw thanks to Evelyn's contacts. Reunited, the team felt stronger, but also more aware of the stakes. The mine was a labyrinth of twisting tunnels and collapsing shafts, patrolled by drones armed with lethal lasers. Leela used her knowledge of technology to disable some of the defenses, while Marcus kept watch, ready to fight if necessary. Deep within the mine, they found the second key encased in a transparent box surrounded by traps. One wrong move would trigger an explosion powerful enough to collapse the entire asteroid. "It's up to you," Daniel said to Leela, trusting her expertise. She nodded, her hand steady despite the pressure. Carefully, she disarmed the traps, sweat dripping down her face. When the box finally opened, revealing the second key, the team let out a collective sigh of relief. Their final destination was the Council's homeworld itself, a fortress surrounded by fleets of warships. Breaking in seemed impossible, but they had no choice. Disguised as traders, they docked at a nearby station and infiltrated the planet under cover of darkness. The third key was hidden in a heavily guarded vault beneath the Council's central palace. Getting inside required teamwork and sacrifice. Marcus distracted the guards while Daniel and Rachel snuck into the vault. Just as they retrieved the key, alarms sounded, and they were forced to flee. In the chaos, Alex reappeared, claiming he had come to make amends. Though wary, the group allowed him to help them escape. As their ship broke free from the Council's orbit, the team sat in silence, exhausted but triumphant. They now held all three keys, but the hardest part was yet to come. Activating the weapons meant confronting not only the Council, but also their own doubts about vengeance versus justice. For now, they could only focus on surviving long enough to see their plan through. With all three keys secured, the Vanguard set their sights on the Genesis Array, the ancient weapon hidden in a distant nebula. The Shard's map led them to its location, but the journey was far from easy. The nebula was a swirling mass of colorful gases and unpredictable gravitational forces, making navigation nearly impossible. Every step forward brought new dangers, testing not only their skills but also their unity. As they approached the array's coordinates, tensions flared within the group. Marcus argued that using the weapon was their only chance for justice, while Rachel insisted they find another way. "We're not like the Council," she said firmly. "If we destroy entire worlds, what makes us better than them?" Daniel struggled to mediate between them. He understood both sides. Marcus's anger burned as hot as the fires that once consumed Earth, while Rachel's caution reminded him of the moral cost of revenge. But time was running out. The Council had already sent fleets to intercept them, determined to stop humanity's resurgence at any cost. When they finally reached the Genesis Array, they were awestruck by its size and complexity. It was a massive network of satellites orbiting a dying star, each one brimming with energy. Activating it would grant them unimaginable power, but also immense responsibility. Evelyn, who had accompanied them after insisting on being part of the final mission, revealed a shocking truth. The array wasn't just a weapon. It could terraform barren planets, creating new homes for humanity across the galaxy. "This isn't about vengeance," Evelyn said, her voice steady despite her frailty. "It's about survival. We can rebuild what we've lost without becoming monsters." Her words struck a chord with everyone, except Marcus. Still haunted by the loss of his unit years ago, he couldn't let go of his hatred for the Council. "Survival means nothing if we're too weak to protect ourselves," he snapped. "They'll never stop hunting us unless we make them afraid." The debate raged late into the night until Daniel made a decision. He turned to Evelyn, trusting her wisdom above all else. "You're right," he said quietly. "We can't repeat their mistakes. Let's use the array to create, not destroy." Evelyn nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. She began decoding the activation sequence, her fingers trembling over the controls. The process was complicated, requiring precise timing and coordination. As she worked, the others prepared for battle. The Council's ships were closing in fast, their weapons locked onto the array. Suddenly, alarms blared. A squadron of fighters broke through the nebulous haze, firing relentlessly. Marcus sprang into action, leading the defense effort alongside Alex, who had proven himself trustworthy since rejoining the team. Together, they manned the ship's cannons, holding off wave after wave of attackers. Inside the control room, Evelyn completed the sequence but collapsed from exhaustion. Leela rushed to her side, helping her sit up. "It's done," Evelyn whispered. "The array is active." A brilliant light erupted from the satellites, bathing the nebula in radiant hues. Instead of destruction, streams of energy shot outward, seeding life onto barren planets scattered across nearby systems. New worlds began to form, green fields, sparkling oceans, and breathable atmospheres taking shape before their eyes. But the victory came at a price. The Council launched a full-scale assault, determined to destroy the array and erase humanity's last hope. Outnumbered and outgunned, the vanguard fought fiercely, buying time for refugee ships to escape to safety. In the chaos, Marcus delivered a fatal blow to the Council's admiral, turning the tide of the battle, but not without sustaining injuries of his own. As the surviving members of the vanguard watched the Council retreat, a mix of emotions washed over them. They had succeeded, but the scars of war ran deep. For now, they could rest, knowing they had given humanity a second chance. Yet they also knew the road ahead would be long and uncertain. Their fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. The Council's ships were closing in, their weapons locked onto the Genesis array. The vanguard knew they had only moments before the enemy would overwhelm them. Inside the control room, Evelyn worked feverishly to activate the array, her frail hands trembling as she entered the final commands. The rest of the team prepared for what might be their last stand. "We can't hold them off forever," Marcus said, gripping his weapon tightly. His voice was steady, but there was a flicker of fear in his eyes. He glanced at the others, Rachel, Leela, Daniel, and even Alex, who had proven himself trustworthy after rejoining the group. They all shared the same look of determination mixed with dread. "Just give us a few more minutes," Evelyn called out, her voice strained but resolute. She hunched over the console, her fingers flying across the keys. The hum of energy grew louder as the array began to power up. Outside, the Council's fighters launched wave after wave of attacks, their lasers lighting up the nebula like streaks of lightning. Rachel and Alex manned the ship's cannons, firing back with everything they had. Explosions lit up the darkness as debris from destroyed fighters floated past their windows. "Keep it together," Rachel shouted, her voice sharp but calm. She knew that panicking would only make things worse. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed by Evelyn's side, ready to protect her at any cost. "Almost there," she muttered under her breath, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Her body was weak, but her mind remained sharp. Finally, with a deep breath, she pressed the last button. The array roared to life, its satellites glowing brighter than ever before. But then something unexpected happened. Instead of unleashing destruction, beams of light shot outward, bathing nearby barren planets in radiant energy. Streams of green and blue spread across their surfaces, transforming them into lush, habitable worlds. The Genesis array wasn't just a weapon. It was a tool for creation. "It worked," Evelyn whispered, collapsing into Daniel's arms. He gently lowered her to the floor, calling for Leela to help. Together, they tended to her while keeping one eye on the battle outside. The Council's forces hesitated, clearly confused by what they were witnessing. This gave the vanguard a brief advantage. Marcus seized the opportunity, leading a daring counterattack. With precision and teamwork, he and Alex targeted the Council's command ship, disabling its engines and forcing it to retreat. Seeing their leader falter, the remaining Council ships began pulling back, unwilling to risk further losses. As the enemy withdrew, the team let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. They had activated the array and survived the Council's assault. But their victory was bittersweet. Evelyn's health was failing rapidly. and the emotional toll of the battle lingered heavily on everyone. Later, as they gathered in the ship's common area, Evelyn spoke softly to them. "You've given humanity a second chance," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Use it wisely. Build a future worth remembering." Her words brought tears to their eyes, but also renewed resolve. They had faced unimaginable odds and emerged victorious, not through hatred or vengeance, but through unity and hope. As the ship drifted away from the array, the newly terraformed planets came into view. Rolling hills, sparkling rivers, and vibrant forests stretched across their surfaces, a testament to humanity's resilience. For the first time in centuries, the future felt possible again. But the journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges ahead: rebuilding society, protecting their new home, and ensuring that humanity never repeated the mistakes of the past. Yet, as they looked at each other, battered but unbroken, they knew they were ready. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The battle was over, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone. The Vanguard had won, but it felt more like survival than victory. Their ship limped through space, battered and scarred from the fight. Refugees who had escaped to safety sent messages of gratitude, calling them heroes. But to Daniel, Rachel, Marcus, and the others, they were just survivors. People trying to hold on to hope in a galaxy that often seemed determined to crush it. Marcus sat alone in the corner of the ship's common area, his wounds bandaged but his spirit bruised. He stared at the floor, replaying the final moments of the battle in his mind. Killing the Council's admiral had been an act of vengeance, but it didn't bring him peace. If anything, it left him emptier. Leela approached him quietly, sitting beside him without saying a word. After a long silence, she spoke softly. "You did what you had to do," she said, "but we can't let anger define us. We've been given a chance to start over, to build something better." Marcus nodded, though he didn't reply. He knew she was right, but letting go of his pain wouldn't be easy. Meanwhile, Rachel worked tirelessly in the engine room, repairing the damage to their ship. Her hands moved quickly, tightening bolts and rerouting power lines. She wasn't just fixing the ship, she was keeping herself busy, trying to avoid thinking about everything they'd lost. When Daniel joined her, she paused for a moment, leaning against the wall. "We made it," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with exhaustion. "But at what cost?" Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We did what we had to do. And now we have to keep going. For them." He gestured toward the refugees' messages displayed on a nearby screen. Faces of men, women, and children smiled back at them, full of hope despite everything they'd endured. Evelyn, though frail and weak from activating the Genesis array, remained a guiding light for the group. Before leaving the array, she had recorded a message for future generations, a reminder of humanity's resilience and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As the team listened to her words one last time, they felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity has always been defined by its ability to rise from the ashes. Evelyn's voice echoed. "You are the proof that even in the darkest times, light can emerge. Carry this legacy forward, not with hatred, but with hope." Inspired by her words, the group began planning their next steps. They decided to establish New Terra, the first colony on one of the newly terraformed planets created by the Genesis array. It would be a fresh start, a chance to rebuild not just homes, but also a society based on unity and compassion. As they landed on the planet, the sight took their breath away. Rolling green hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with sparkling lakes and lush forests. The air smelled clean and fresh, a stark contrast to the suffocating confines of their ships and stations. For the first time in years, they felt a glimmer of joy. Rachel immediately set to work designing sustainable structures, ensuring the colony could thrive without harming the environment. Lila studied the planet's ecosystem, fascinated by its similarities to Earth. Marcus helped train volunteers for defense, vowing to protect their new home no matter the cost. And Daniel, he documented everything, filling journals with stories of their journey so no one would forget where they came from or how far they'd come. In the months that followed, the colony grew. Refugees poured in, eager to contribute to the rebirth of humanity. Together, they built schools, farms, and workshops, creating a community bound by shared struggle and hope. Though scars remained, both physical and emotional, they found strength in each other. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Daniel stood atop a hill overlooking the colony. Rachel joined him, handing him a cup of tea. They didn't speak, simply watching as families laughed and children played below. "We did it," Daniel finally said, his voice soft but filled with pride. "Not just surviving, but living." Rachel smiled, nodding. "And we'll keep going, one step at a time." In the vastness of space, countless stars twinkled like promises of endless possibilities. Humanity had started as wanderers, scattered and broken. But now, they were pioneers once again, ready to carve out their destiny among the stars.